Assalamu alaikum, dear learners. Welcome back to class. Let us now continue with the way how Makkah was conquered, the conquest of Makkah. Remember, we had discussed on the event that led to the conquest of Makkah. Now let us see, how was Makkah conquered? We are still on the conquest of Makkah. How was Makkah conquered? Having that, now the Treaty of I.R.E was no longer existing because the Quraysh people decided that they were to end the terms of the treaty. They were to consider the Treaty of I.R.E nullified. That is the condition they chose. So, my dear learners, let us now discuss on the event what happened until Makkah was conquered. I want you to listen very keenly as we'll be writing all the short notes. Listen to the story on how Makkah was conquered. Prophet Muhammad was now free to take any action against the Quraysh because the treaty was no longer existing. He was convinced that this was the time he was now free to conquer Makkah and the sacred land of the Al-Kaaba from the Kafir or from the Kufar, from the Quraysh. So in the month of Ramadan, that was 8th year after Hijrah, the Prophet, you have been told, that left Medina with 10,000 soldiers heading to Makkah to conquer it. Remember, we said to conquer means to take control over it. They wanted to take control of Makkah from the Kufar, from the Quraysh. His greatest concern was to conquer Makkah without any bloodshed. Meaning he was ready to conquer Makkah, but he did not want to involve any fight with the Quraysh. He ordered the army to move quickly in order to take the Makkans by surprise. He didn't want the Makkans to know of the arrangement. So the Quraysh were not aware of the Muslims' plan. When the Muslims reached the place called Mar al-Zahran, the Prophet ordered them to camp there. So we can say the Muslims camped at a place called Mar al-Zahran. So, my dear learners, when did the conquest of Makkah took place? So it was in the month of Ramadan. I just want us to note down as we continue. Ramadan, 8th year after Hijrah. So, in Ramadan, 8th year after Hijrah. Prophet led 10,000 soldiers to conquer Makkah. In Ramadan, 8th year after Hijrah, Prophet led 10,000 soldiers to conquer Makkah. So when they reach Mar al-Zahran, they camped there. So we can say the Muslims camped at Mar al-Zahran. Mar al-Zahran, that is the place where they camped. Mar al-Zahran in Makkah. They camped there. So when the Muslims reached Mar al-Zahran, the Prophet ordered them to camp there. He also ordered them to light fire so that the Kufar would see many fires around and they were to be surprised what is happening, which people are camping over Mar al-Zahran. So Abu Sufyan, the leader of the Quraysh, came out of Makkah to find out the people who were camping and what was the fire all about. He was captured by the guards. When he came to check on what was happening, Abu Sufyan was captured by the Muslims soldiers and was brought to Prophet Muhammad. So The Prophet asked Abu Sufyan to embrace Islam. After being captured, he was ordered to embrace Islam. Abu Sufyan agreed and embraced Islam. So we can also add Abu Sufyan embraced Islam. Remember, he was the leader of the Quraysh. Now, after him, the leader of the Quraysh embracing Islam, what next? He embraced Islam. The Prophet forgave Abu Sufyan and all the people of Makkah. After the leader accepted to be a Muslim, he forgave him and also forgave all the leaders of the Makkah, meaning Prophet forgave all the Quraysh of what they have been doing to the Muslims and himself, the Prophet. Abu Sufyan returned to Makkah and he declared to the people of Makkah that he had accepted Islam, and he also told them about the Prophet Muhammad coming to conquer Makkah. So Prophet Muhammad promised safety for those people who were to enter the house of Abu Sufyan. He was now ready to go and attack Makkah, and he wanted to conquer Makkah peacefully. In that they were going to attack everybody in Makkah, but decided that for those people who will be remaining in certain position, they were to be safe. They were not to be attacked. So which positions are these? That one means the places that were declared safety during the conquest of Makkah. Let us see on these places that were declared safe during the conquest of Makkah, meaning the people that were to be in those places were not to be attacked. Now, my dear learners, the places that were declared safe during the conquest of Makkah, having Abu Sufyan embracing Islam, and Prophet Muhammad forgave him, and he forgave all the Quraysh of Makkans. He was now ready to enter Makkah with his soldiers. So he sent a messenger to the Makkans to announce that whoever entered the house of Abu Sufyan, whoever stayed in his or her own house, or went to the sacred Kaaba, these kind of people were to be safe. So those ones were three places that were declared safe. The very first one was the house of Abu Sufyan. The house of Abu Sufyan. So those people who entered or ran into the house of Abu Sufyan and locked themselves there, nobody was to enter the house of Abu Sufyan. Nobody was to attack the house of Abu Sufyan, meaning they were safe inside the house of Abu Sufyan. The second position, those people who entered the sacred mosque. The sacred mosque means that one is the Kaaba. So we can say the Holy Kaaba. So those people who ran and enter the Kaaba were also not to be attacked, but to be safe inside the Kaaba. Nobody was to go and attack the Kaaba. The Kaaba was to be left in a peaceful environment that way. And then the third place was those people who remained indoors. Remember, the Prophet wanted to conquer Makkah peacefully, so he was not going to destroy anybody's house. He didn't want to destroy the Kaaba. But you who will be found meandering about with weapons, you are to be attacked. So those people who remained indoors. Those people who remained indoors were not to be attacked. They were to be safe. And then those who remained indoors, the other point that you can add, those who surrendered their arms and weapons were also to be safe. Suppose you are out, but you surrendered all the weapons, the military weapons that you're having, you were also to be safe. So for the places, these ones, the three places, they were to be safe. And for this one, and for those people who now surrendered their arms, they were also to be safe. those who surrendered their weapons or arms were to be safe. The prophets and the soldiers were not going to attack them. So we are being told that when the prophet went to the Kaaba, after this they've surrendered their weapons. Those people who were inside their houses remained safe. The people who ran into the Kaaba were also safe. And those people who went and hid themselves into the house of Abu Sufyan were also safe. So we are being told that the next day in the morning, that was now on 20th day of Ramadan, the same year, the prophet entered Makkah with his army, reciting without showing off or without any arrogancy. He did not enter arrogantly or show off his power, but he was humble, remembering this was a blessing from Allah. It was not his own power. He bowed in gratitude of Allah for his victory, meaning he praised Allah. He gave an order to the Muslims not to cause any harm unless anyone tried to oppose them, meaning if you surrender, you are not to be attacked. They entered peacefully. The prophet went straight to the Kaaba and performed tawaf. So we are being told that he went straight to the Kaaba and performed tawaf. In and around the Kaaba, there were 360 idols around the Kaaba. How many idols were around the Kaaba, my dear learners? 360. With a stick, he began breaking the idols as he was reciting that the truth has come and the falsehood has departed. Indeed, falsehood is bound to depart. He also ordered all the pictures of the idols to be removed. When he was destroying the idols, the prophet was reciting that indeed the truth has come and the falsehood have departed. The truth meaning people are supposed to stop worshipping idols and now worship worship Allah himself. Allah was the truth God. Idol worshippers, idols were not true God. So that was the falsehood that was being departed and the truth was now coming out. He also ordered all the pictures of the idols that were inside the Kaaba to be removed. Now, my dear learners, we are being told that after the pictures of the Kaaba were removed, when the time for Salah approached, remember Muslims have got their times for Salah, Prophet ordered Bilal bin Rabah to make adhana. And remember, Bilal bin Rabah was the first one to make the adhana. Bilal climbed the top roof of the Kaaba and made the call. Adhana is the call for Muslims that it is time for prayers. The kuffar of the Makkah were fearful, thinking that the Prophet would revenge against them. But remember, the Prophet forgave them. The Prophet entered the Kaaba, entered Makkah peacefully, and he wanted to conquer Makkah peacefully, without beating them, without torturing them, without even throwing them out of the city. They were left to be in Makkah. And the Prophet openly showed mercy and forgave them despite being hurt severely by the Quraysh in the Battle of Uhud. This made the Makkans, many of them, to embrace Islam because the Prophet forgave them. They thought that the Prophet was going to revenge on them. And finally, Makkah was conquered by the Prophet and the Muslim peacefully. And the Makkans also, many of them embraced Islam. Is that not wonderful, my dear learners? Yes. So we can continue with our short points. Having surrendered their safety, we are being told that the Prophet went to the Kaaba and performed tawaf. So we can also add Prophet went to the Kaaba and perform tawaf. Tawaf means going around the Kaaba 7 times. As you praise Allah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, you go around the Kaaba 7 times. The Prophet went around the Kaaba and performed tawaf. Remember, I've just explained that tawaf means going around the Kaaba 7 times, praising Allah or mentioning the name of Allah, saying Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And another thing, after he went to the Kaaba and performed tawaf, what else did the Prophet do around the Kaaba? He destroyed all the idols in and around the Kaaba. So we can say the Prophet destroyed all the idols in and around the Kaaba. He destroyed all the Kaaba. So how many idols were around the Kaaba? Yes, 360 idols. So he destroyed 360 idols. He also ordered all the pictures of idols in the Kaaba to be removed. So he also ordered the pictures of idols in the Kaaba and in the houses of people to be removed. He ordered all pictures of idols in the Kaaba and people houses, the ones that were also in the houses were to be houses to be removed. At prayer times, we are being told that he ordered Bilal bin Rabah to make adhana. At prayer time, Bilal bin Rabah made the adhana. The call for Muslims to pray, that it is prayer times. And then many Makkans embraced Islam because the Prophet forgave them. Many Makkans embraced Islam because the Prophet forgave them. They expected that the Prophet was going to revenge against them because they mistreated the Prophet. They hurt the Prophet during the Battle of Uhud. So they did not expect that the Prophet was going to forgive them after having conquered Makkah. But it was a surprise that the Prophet forgave all of them. And with that, they accepted to be Muslims. They embraced Islam. And the last point, my dear learners, you can say the Prophet and his companions conquered Makkah peacefully. The Prophet and his companions conquered Makkah peacefully. And that's why until today, Muslims always visit Makkah to perform Hajj, to perform Umrah yearly, freely, without any fight, without anybody being against us, the Muslim. Until then, my dear learners, that's the way the conquest of Makkah happened. I want us to now to discuss on the lessons learned from the conquest of Makkah. What are some of the lessons that you have learned from the conquest of Makkah? So let us see on the lessons learned from the conquest of Makkah. Lessons learned from the conquest of Makkah. What can you tell me that you have learned from the events that led from the conquest of Makkah and the conquest of Makkah itself? What are some of the lessons that you have learned from the story that I've given out? We should always exercise forgiveness. That is my first point. Forgiveness is the very important lesson that we have learned in the conquest of Makkah. We should exercise forgiveness. We should exercise forgiveness. Another lesson, my dear learners, places of worship should be free from idols. That is why the prophet ordered all the idols to be removed. So places of worship should be free from idols. And the third point, another lesson, Islam means peace, and we should spread it peacefully. Islam itself means peace. So spreading of Islam should also be done peacefully, not by force, not by fighting, not by war. So Islam means peace, and we should spread it peacefully. We should spread it peacefully. Another lesson that I can tell you, my dear learners, we should show love and kindness to the non-Muslims. They are not our enemies. We should show love and kindness to the non-Muslims, just the way the prophet did with the Quraysh. Even after attacking him, torturing him, he showed love to them, he was kind to them, he forgave them. He did not revenge. Another lesson that we can add is we should not pay evil with evil. We should not pay evil with evil. Pay evil with love, for the evil ones to be embarrassed, for the evil ones to humble themselves. The next point is we should always practice patience. We should always practice patience or patience. The prophet was very, very patient. He wanted to conquer Makkah. He wanted to spread Islam. He faced a lot of challenges. He was tortured, but he was patient and he had faith that everything will be okay. We should always, another point or another lesson is we should always apply the noble example of prophet's character. We should always apply the noble character of the prophet. That is why we are always advised to follow the teachings and sunnah of the prophet. And the last point that we can add is we should always work together, as in we should always have unity. We should always have unity among us. We should always have unity among us. And that marks the end of the lessons that we learned from the Conquest of Makkah. My dear learners, I want you now to write down the following questions for your revision on the Conquest of Makkah. Kindly write down the following questions on the revision on the Conquest of Makkah. The very first question: why were Maccans afraid? Why were Maccans afraid of the Prophet? Why were Maccans afraid of the Prophet? The second question: which places were declared safe during the conquest of Makkah? Which places were declared safe during the conquest of Makkah? The third question: which lessons do Muslims learn from the events of Fathul Makkah? Which lessons do Muslims learn from the events of Fathul Makkah? Until those ones, try as much as possible you answer the 3 questions correctly. Bye bye, learners.